All right, guys, in today's brief video, I'm going to share with you 3 types of people who should likely never consume cannabis, or if they are going to consume, should exercise extreme caution. We're going to talk about Cannabinoid Hyperemesis Syndrome. We're going to discuss psychosis and risk factors for psychosis. And then we're going to discuss, lastly, and maybe most importantly, people who think they are addicted to cannabis. Not people who are addicted, not people who have quit and want to go back to using moderately, but people who wholeheartedly believe in cannabis addiction and addiction in general and who are in recovery. We're going to talk about that. Now, before I go into today's video, I want to say a quick disclaimer. I would happily consume cannabis again at some point in my life if I had the desire to. I'm someone who struggled with a cannabis substance use disorder. I struggled with numerous of these health conditions that I'm going to talk about today throughout my time using cannabis, and I'll talk about my experiences with that. But that's not why I don't go back to using it. I simply don't have a desire to anymore because since quitting, my life has changed in so many positive ways. So if you're someone who enjoys the content in today's video or someone who's struggling to quit or take a tolerance break, be sure to check out the links in the video description and the links in the pinned comment for paid and free program resources to help you guys quit. So people who should never smoke, let's dive into it. So first and foremost, we have something called CHS, or Cannabinoid Hyperemesis Syndrome. And this is essentially a syndrome that is signaled by excessive vomiting preceding cannabis use, okay? So the person consumes cannabis, usually with the intention of it helping with stomach upset and nausea and low appetite, and then later on the person's vomiting. And they could be vomiting once a day, a few times a week. They could be vomiting 6, 7, 10 times an hour and requiring hospitalization for dehydration. There are people who have actually died from this syndrome before due to complications relating to malnutrition and dehydration from vomiting so much. So this is essentially where you're smoking weed and it causes you to vomit and get all these stomach problems and experience a bunch of weight loss and a bunch of body pain. Another hallmark sign of this symptom is the person experiences weight loss and like muscle pain and body pain that's only alleviated by hot showers, okay? That's Cannabinoid Hyperemesis Syndrome. Now, I struggled with this with stage 1, which is called the prodromal stage of CHS. I had the nausea constantly, I had the weight loss, and I had the feeling of constantly wanting to throw up and an inability to eat food without consuming cannabis. Now, this went on for me for probably months, at least several weeks, and I eventually quit before I got to the hyperemesis stage where I was vomiting every day. And I believe you're seeing this more and more because of the super high concentration THC that people are consuming. I don't even believe this to be linked, and I'll explain why in a little bit, to prolonged cannabis use. I think this is probably more related to the strength of THC that people are consuming over an acute or short period of time. That's my guess. Stage 2 is the hyperemesis stage where you're vomiting a lot, usually requiring hospitalization. Stage 3 is the recovery stage where you quit consuming cannabis and this condition completely goes away, okay? It's 100% curable, assuming you never consume any type of cannabis again, okay? That's what cures it. The reality of CHS is people who are suffering from CHS and consuming cannabis still or struggling to stop, they have to realize truly with this condition, there is no benefit to continued smoking. Like CHS is only going to lead to more pain. It's only going to lead to more financial hardship. It's only going to lead to greater strain on your relationships. There is absolutely no pleasure involved with CHS. So if you're struggling with this, I would encourage you never smoke again, because even years later, you can stop smoking, go back and smoke years later, and this condition can start up right away again like it never stopped. So I would encourage you to acknowledge that there's truly no benefit. And if you're struggling with this, I have a few videos on the topic. If you search around my channel, I have a whole playlist on it talking about nutrition tips to help you out and other little tips and tricks to help you get through this. Here's the rub though, real quick with CHS. people who have CHS, what they'll think is, oh, the cannabis is helping the nausea. It's helping with the appetite. It's helping with the stomach problems. Because initially when they smoke, a lot of those things will feel better. I thought that too. I thought, oh, I have to wait all day until I can smoke before I can eat. And the reality is the cannabis is causing those problems, not helping it. But it's confusing because in many cases when people quit when they have this condition, they also go through cannabis withdrawal symptoms, which might include stomach upset, nausea, vomiting, insomnia, muscle pain, withdrawal symptoms. So they quit, the symptoms get worse. They think, oh, it wasn't CHS, even though it was just cannabis withdrawal, and then they go back to smoking again. To be clear though, quitting doesn't cause CHS. It's prolonged or excessive high-potency cannabis use that's been linked to CHS, okay? That's kind of what we know so far on it, as far as I'm aware. Another type of person who should not smoke at all ever again, in my opinion, are people with severe mental health issues or who have experienced psychosis before, okay? If you've ever consumed cannabis and been hospitalized for psychosis, and I believe it's if you've been hospitalized 3 or more times for an acute episode of psychosis, your risk of schizophrenia is like, I'm making up this number, but it's like 100-fold. Like it's almost guaranteed that later on in life, based on current literature, that you're going to develop schizophrenia later on, okay? So if you've ever struggled with psychosis, especially related to cannabis use, I would absolutely not consume cannabis. The benefit that you're potentially getting just is not there. The other thing with psychosis too is it's not only putting you at risk, but a lot of times with psychosis involving cannabis, it's related to acts of violence, okay? Brutal murders, brutal stabbings. And I'm not saying this is someone who's just like reefer madness type propaganda BS. This is just like facts, and this information is out there. So psychosis not only puts you in danger, but it can also put your family or your loved ones or other people in your life in danger. So if you've been hospitalized a few times and for psychotic episodes, cannabis is probably not for you. Bipolar disorder almost always makes it worse. Bipolar disorder, bipolar depressive disorder, split or personality disorders, all things that can put you at risk of psychosis, and in most cases are going to make cannabis use is going to make it much worse. We see this all the time with people who are bipolar. I've seen a number of people diagnosed as bipolar, but they actually weren't bipolar. It was actually just a change in their personality due to years of a negative response to cannabis use. So I've literally seen people go from being diagnosed as bipolar to being undiagnosed after quitting cannabis, which is just crazy, okay? Certainly if you have schizophrenia or been diagnosed with that, or if you've had multiple psychosis episodes and have been hospitalized and you're at an increased risk of schizophrenia, you're going to want to avoid or completely cease using cannabis, okay? This is a major reason why I don't go back to it. Aside from having stage 1 of CHS, I did suffer from an acute state of psychosis. It was terrifying, right? I had the visual disturbances. I had delusions and these visions of grandeur, and I thought I was someone I wasn't. It's really a terrifying thing to go through, and I don't want to mess with anything that puts me at risk of developing schizophrenia or some other mental health disorder that I didn't need to suffer from, right? That was self-induced through my choice of consuming cannabis. This is crazy when it comes to psychosis. So the risk factors that can put people at development for psychosis, okay? So if you have these risk factors, you already have a higher chance of developing psychosis. Throw THC into the mix, and now we're potentially going to have some big problems, okay? If you use methamphetamines, if you use excessive alcohol, or if you're going through alcohol withdrawal symptoms, alcohol withdrawal is a risk factor for psychosis. And some people consuming cannabis can increase that risk. There's a lot of people who quit alcohol and try and get through the withdrawals with the consumption of cannabis, not knowing that they might be actually increasing their risk of psychosis. And I'm not downgrading people who have quit alcohol successfully with cannabis. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying be careful. That's all. People who are prescribed stimulants, so like ADHD and ADD medications can put you at a risk. Stimulants, excessive stimulant use can put you at a risk of psychosis. Excessive caffeine abuse and energy drink use and pre-workout use can put you at a risk of development of psychosis, okay? SSRIs, corticosteroids, commonly prescribed in autoimmune diseases, commonly prescribed for back pain and muscle pain. Corticosteroids can put you at a risk. People who are using Parkinson's medications, pregnancy and postpartum can increase a person's risk of psychosis, right? We've talked to plenty of moms who have been struggling postpartum consuming cannabis because they've been struggling, but who have been at an increased risk of psychosis, okay? Some autoimmune disorders, depression, OCD, and then, of course, bipolar disorder and some of the personality disorders as well. All of these things put you at an increased risk of developing psychosis. So if you already have this stuff and now you throw cannabis into the mix, down the line, it's kind of like a question of when and how bad will it be. Okay, that's not quoting me. That's quoting a psychiatrist that I interviewed on my channel, someone who had zero bias in the matter. He did a very just factual presentation. The video is like 20,000 views. I'll link that video in the video description here. It's a deep dive into psychosis and cannabis. Okay, lastly, another person who should not consume. Addicted persons, okay? And I say that in parentheses because here's the deal. And I understand the science of addiction, okay? I struggled with addiction. I struggled with a cannabis substance use disorder. But if you are of the mindset that you have an incurable disease called addiction, if you are of the belief that you are going to be in a lifelong recovery from cannabis, that you could always fall off the wagon at any given moment if you're not vigilant all the time, if you never become recovered and you're just in recovery forever, if you believe that you have no choice and no control, that you are powerless over this substance, over this addiction, then you should never consume cannabis again. You shouldn't consume any substances ever again, okay? Ever again. If that's your belief surrounding cannabis and surrounding substance use. And I'm not bashing that belief. I want to be very clear, even though I think it's dangerous to think that way. And I think it actually takes away a person's control and power and stuff. Some people need really strict guidelines and standards that they need to adhere to in order to remain successful in sobriety. And I get that. A lot of 12-step programs are rooted in these beliefs. And I get that. If that's for you and that's your belief system, by all means. But if you go back to using or use cannabis, you're never going to believe that you even have the opportunity to use moderately or use recreationally in a controlled setting. Okay? It will be impossible to even comprehend that. And therefore, you should not consume cannabis ever again. Yes, I suffered from CHS. I suffered from an acute state of psychosis. That's not why I don't go back to consuming cannabis. I don't go back to it. It's not because I'm at fear of getting addicted again and consuming it, nonstop. That's not why. I've built a life for myself in which cannabis doesn't fit anymore. I have no need to go back. I have no desire to go back. And that's what we help people do in our programs. So if you want to learn about those programs, again, the link's in the pinned comment. Group coaching, one-on-one coaching. We have supplements to help people quit, all types of things. Other people who should use caution when consuming cannabis, pregnancy and people who are breastfeeding. THC has been found to cross over in the breast milk, okay? COPD, if you have a lung cancer or a lung issue related to smoking, I would not smoke cannabis. Yes, you could probably do tinctures or edibles and obviously avoid that problem, but I would not smoke cannabis if you have COPD or breathing issues. People who drive, or if you're facing DUI issues, a lot of people don't know this, but I believe, at least in my state, I'm like 99% sure your insurance company has the right to deny you insurance coverage in an accident if you test positive for a DUI or a DWI, alcohol, cannabis, other pills. That's terrifying. So you're getting sued, you need surgery, and now your insurance carrier says we're not covering you because you were under the influence. So if you're driving for work, if you're a driver for work, or you're going out for a job that requires driving or the operation of heavy machinery, from a liability standpoint, personal liability standpoint, you should not be consuming cannabis. Like, it's putting you are making yourself a walking liability. And I'll actually say the same thing too for anyone who has a family or who's going out to get life insurance. Remember, they're going to test you for cannabis. They're going to test you for nicotine. And if you test positive, you're either going to get denied or they're going to quantify you as a smoker and place you at a higher rate, okay? Because you're now a liability in their opinion. So you'll pay a higher premium or whatever it is. So keep that in mind, okay? Like, maybe you shouldn't be consuming or taking a break. Maybe you should take a break around those times. If you just lost your job or you're trying to level up in your job in life, maybe your job is a source of stress and you want out of that job, but your cannabis consumption is holding you back. Maybe now it's time to quit or take a tolerance break, because maybe the only reason you're smoking is to deal with the stress of a crappy job that you don't want to be doing, right? In that case, quit, go out for a new job. Now, I want to give a shout out to one of our channel partners, sponsors, I should say, Exploro Test Strips, okay? Exploro, they're a great brand. I have an Amazon affiliate link in the video description in the pinned comment to this video. They're highly sensitive THC testing strips. They also carry ones for nicotine as well too, but they have a whole masterclass on detoxing cannabis for jobs and things like that. So I'll put links to all that information and the links in the pinned comment in the video description, but show them some love because they show our channel some love. And without people like this, we wouldn't have the channel that we have today, right? This is how we survive financially. Under the age of 25. So if you're a teenager, right? Everyone's like, Joe Rogan smokes weed, blah, blah, blah. Joe Rogan didn't start smoking till I think he was in his late 20s or early 30s, if I recall correctly. Your brain is still developing, okay? Your endocannabinoid is still developing as far as we know right now. So like, smoking under 25 is just, it's bad news. Even myself, I didn't start until my later 20s. I was in college when I began smoking weed. But like, if you're under 25, you're in high school, I wouldn't mess with it. Like, I just wouldn't mess with it. Wait until you're older, see where your life is at, see how your environment's changed. Heck, by the time you get to 25, you might be living such a great life you don't even want to smoke anymore, right? But if you're under 25, things are still developing, and I wouldn't want to risk screwing that up. And then medications. I don't know all the medications that interact with cannabis use, but there certainly are medications that can interact in your liver with cannabis use and the byproducts of cannabis. And you might want to do some Google searches to see if you're putting yourself at some increased risk with those medications, okay? Now, if you guys enjoyed today's video, we have tons of things to help you quit or take tolerance breaks. I mentioned the Exploro test strips and their programs, their detox masterclass, especially if you're looking for a job. We have our supplement, Kick It, Crave Less chewing gum. We have 90 count bottles. We have 30 count bottles. We have 3 packs of 90 count bottles. It's a cannabis-free, nicotine-free chewing gum designed to help reduce cravings using supplements, N-acetylcysteine and KSM-66 ashwagandha. It's an incredible product for helping you quit. You can learn more about that right here on YouTube Shopping or the link in the pinned comment. We have our school, AddictionMindset Recovery Coaching Group Community. It's a group community. We have all types of private classes in there and things like that. You can join that for a 7-day free trial. $27 a month after that if you want to continue in our private community. And then we have one-on-one coaching. If you need one-on-one help, you have questions where you want to speak with me personally, check out our one-on-one coaching sessions. We literally have options for everyone, all the way from free, all the way to paid. Thanks to our company, thanks to our supplements, thanks to companies that are working with us to support the channel. All right, guys, check out the links in the pinned comment in the video description. Until next time.